It's a vast pottery army which is slowly being unearthed from the tomb where it's lain for more than 2,000 years.
8,000 warriors buried over 2,000 years ago.
Beneath the quiet slopes of Mount Li, near the ancient city of Xi'an in China's Shaanxi province, lies one of the most enigmatic archaeological mysteries on Earth, the resting place of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China, whose reign from 221 to 210 BCE transformed a fractured landscape of warring states into a single empire. For years, China was mocked for keeping the emperor's tomb sealed.
Ancient army of warriors has been quietly conquering the world. Wherever small battalions of China's famous terracotta warriors are exhibited, they win over a new legion of fans.
But they have a good reason for it, and it'll shock you. Let's get started. The Mausoleum and the Terracotta Army. In the spring of 1974, in the quiet Lintong district near Xi'an in China's Shaanxi province, a group of farmers digging a well struck fragments of clay with their shovels that, upon closer inspection, revealed life-sized human figures. This marked the accidental unearthing of what is now recognized as one of the most extraordinary archaeological finds in the world. The Terracotta Army. Archaeologists from the Shaanxi Provincial Museum were soon dispatched to the site, and excavations revealed an immense underground complex that had lain untouched for more than 2 millennia. The find was traced back to the reign of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, who unified the warring states into a single empire and laid the foundations of centralized imperial rule. The vast army of sculpted soldiers, horses, and chariots was buried to guard the emperor in death, embodying the same ambition, order, and authoritarian grandeur that had defined his reign in life. However, the tomb was not to be opened. For years, outsiders wondered why that was. We'll reveal that soon enough. But first, let's take a walk through history. Originally named Yingzheng, Qin Shi Huang rose to power as the king of Qin at the age of 13 and, after years of relentless conquest, unified China in 221 BCE. Declaring himself the first emperor, or Shi Huangdi, he centralized government, standardized currency, weights, measures, and even written script across the newly formed empire. He launched monumental public works projects, including the early construction of what would later become the Great Wall of China, a vast network of roads, and an imperial canal system to connect the Yellow and Yangtze rivers. Yet his rule was also marked by fear, censorship, and a quest for immortality. According to historical accounts like Sima Qian's Records of the Grand Historian, or Qiji, Qin Shi Huang was obsessed with overcoming death, sending expeditions in search of elixirs of life and employing alchemists to concoct mercury-based potions intended to preserve his youth. When his death came suddenly in 210 BCE, during a tour of the eastern provinces, preparations for his eternal rest were already well underway, in the form of an enormous subterranean mausoleum complex designed to mirror his empire in miniature. Located about 35 kilometers east of modern Xi'an, the mausoleum spans an area of nearly 98 square kilometers, roughly the size of a large city. Archaeologists estimate that more than 700,000 laborers and craftsmen worked on the site over several decades, beginning shortly after Qin Shi Huang ascended the throne. The complex was designed as a microcosm of his earthly domain, with walls, gates, palaces, stables, and administrative offices recreated underground. The emperor's tomb mound, standing about 51 meters high today, but originally believed to have reached over 70 meters, remains unexcavated, a solitary hill covered in vegetation that conceals the emperor's burial chamber. Surrounding it are hundreds of subsidiary pits and structures, the most famous being those containing the Terracotta Army, discovered in 1974 and later opened to controlled excavation by the Shaanxi Provincial Institute of Archaeology. 3 major pits have been excavated, collectively housing what is estimated to be over 8,000 terracotta soldiers, 130 war chariots, and 670 horses. Each soldier is unique, modeled with individualized facial features, hairstyles, armor styles, and expressions, suggesting that artisans may have drawn inspiration from actual soldiers of the Qin army. Standing between 175 and 200 centimeters tall, the figures represent a clear hierarchy. Generals are taller and more elaborately dressed, while infantry and archers are slightly smaller. The soldiers were originally painted in vivid colors: reds, blues, purples, greens, and golds. But exposure to air caused the pigments to flake away within hours of excavation. The level of detail is extraordinary. Weapons such as bronze swords, spears, halberds, and crossbows were found alongside them, many preserved in near-perfect condition due to an advanced chrome plating technique not rediscovered until the 20th century. The purpose of this vast clay army was not merely artistic, but profoundly spiritual and political. In ancient Chinese belief, the afterlife was conceived as a continuation of the earthly realm, complete with its hierarchies, duties, and dangers. For Qin Shi Huang, whose authority on earth had been absolute, it was imperative that his dominion continue beyond death. The terracotta warriors thus functioned as a supernatural garrison, protecting the emperor's spirit from enemies in the afterlife and ensuring the maintenance of cosmic order. They reflect both the emperor's militaristic worldview and his belief that death could be conquered through power and permanence. The layout of the pits reflects a real battlefield formation. Pit 1, the largest, covers about 14,000 square meters and contains over 6,000 soldiers arranged in rectangular battle ranks. Pit 2 is a mixed-force unit of cavalry and archers, and Pit 3 appears to have served as the command post. Historical records, including Sima Qian's account written about a century after the emperor's death, describe the tomb as an elaborate underground palace filled with treasures and mechanical traps. He wrote that it contained rivers and seas, fashioned from flowing mercury, lit by lamps fueled with whale oil, and defended by crossbows rigged to fire automatically if the tomb was disturbed. For many years, such descriptions were regarded as legend. However, modern soil analyses conducted around the mound have revealed mercury concentrations dozens of times higher than normal background levels, lending credence to the ancient account. While the scale and complexity of Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum are unparalleled, the practice of elaborate burial complexes for Chinese rulers continued through successive dynasties. The Han emperors who followed the Qin adopted many of the same funerary traditions, though their tombs were generally less militaristic and more symbolic. The tomb of Emperor Jing of Han, for example, located at Yangling near Xi'an, includes more than 50,000 miniature clay figures representing attendants, animals, and entertainers, rather than full-sized soldiers. Later dynasties, such as the Tang and Ming, constructed vast necropolises lined with spiritways guarded by stone statues. Yet none approached the sheer ambition of Qin Shi Huang's project, which sought to replicate an entire empire beneath the earth. Today, the mausoleum of the first Qin emperor and its terracotta army are recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, inscribed in 1987 for their outstanding historical and artistic value. The site has become one of China's most visited destinations, drawing millions of visitors annually to the Museum of the Terracotta Warriors and Horses. Excavation continues under strict scientific supervision, with new discoveries periodically emerging, such as bronze waterfowl and musicians from auxiliary pits, which suggest that the emperor envisioned not only a defensive army, but also a full replica of his imperial court. But before we go any further, let's see how the tomb was described by the ancients. Ancient accounts and early clues about the tomb. Around 2,000 years ago, long before the first fragments of the terracotta army were uncovered, The only surviving account of the tomb of China's first emperor came from the pen of a single historian, Sima Qian, who lived from 145 to 86 BCE. Writing during the Han Dynasty, roughly a century after Qin Shi Huang's death, Sima Qian composed his monumental chronicle, the Shiji, or the Records of the Grand Historian, which remains one of the most important historical works in East Asian history. In one of its most remarkable passages, he recorded the construction of the emperor's vast mausoleum, an account that for over 2 millennia served as the sole written source describing what lay beneath the great mound east of Xi'an. His detailed narrative, covering everything from the workforce and materials used to the supposed supernatural and mechanical features within, offered early readers a glimpse into an extraordinary underground empire. Yet for centuries, scholars doubted its literal truth, dismissing many of Sima Qian's claims as myth or exaggeration. According to Sima Qian's Shiji, work on the mausoleum began soon after Yingzheng became king of Qin in 246 BCE, when he was just 13 years old. The historian wrote that construction continued for nearly 38 years, spanning the entire length of the emperor's reign, and that over 700,000 laborers, including conscripts, prisoners, and artisans, were employed in the colossal undertaking. The site, located at Mount Li near modern Lintong district, Xi'an, was chosen for its rich jade deposits and its symbolic association with immortality. Sima Qian described the project as a massive subterranean palace intended to replicate Qin Shi Huang's earthly realm in miniature, ensuring his sovereignty continued after death. He wrote that craftsmen were ordered to dig through 3 subterranean streams to create the tomb's foundation, and then to build a grand chamber at its center, outfitted with palaces, scenic towers, and 100 officials. The emperor's body was said to rest within a bronze coffin in this central chamber, surrounded by replicas of his empire's landscapes and treasures. Sima Qian claimed that the burial chamber contained rivers, seas, and flowing mercury designed to represent China's waterways, with mercury kept in constant motion through an ingenious system of mechanical pumps. The historian wrote, "Mercury was used to fashion the 100 rivers, the Yangtze and the Yellow River, and the Great Sea, and made to flow by mechanical means." This detail, utterly incredible to readers for centuries, suggested not merely artistic ambition, but a level of technological sophistication that few believed possible in the 3rd century BCE. At the time Sima Qian wrote, mercury, known in Chinese as shuiyin or liquid silver, was a rare and expensive substance associated with alchemy and immortality in ancient Chinese thought. Qin Shi Huang, who had famously sought elixirs of eternal life from magicians and alchemists, regarded mercury as both symbol and substance of immortality. Ironically, many historians now believe his death may have been hastened by ingesting mercury compounds given to him as medicine. Equally fascinating are Sima Qian's descriptions of the mechanical traps supposedly installed to protect the tomb from intrusion. He wrote that crossbows and arrows were primed, set to shoot at anyone who entered. This detail reflects the technological ingenuity of the Qin military, which had perfected the use of mass-produced bronze crossbows during the Wars of Unification. Archaeologists have indeed uncovered thousands of such crossbow triggers and bolts in the surrounding pits of the mausoleum complex. While no one has opened the central burial chamber to confirm the presence of such booby traps, Sima Qian's assertion aligns with known Qin engineering practices, which often integrated mechanical devices for both warfare and architecture. Sima Qian's account also recorded the staggering wealth buried with the emperor. He claimed that artisans filled the tomb with rare jewels and precious stones, while the ceilings were studded with pearls to represent the constellations of the night sky. The emperor's palace above ground was meant to mirror this celestial order, just as his underground world recreated the earthly one. The historian also noted the grim measures taken to preserve secrecy. After the emperor's death and burial in 210 BCE, he wrote, "Those who had built the tomb were shut inside so that none might betray its secrets." This chilling detail reflects both the authoritarian culture of the Qin dynasty and the immense importance attached to the emperor's eternal protection. Although direct archaeological evidence of mass burial at the site is limited, the Shiji's depiction of workers entombed alongside their creation is now part of the legend of the first emperor's tomb. For nearly 2,000 years, these stories were regarded with skepticism by historians and archaeologists alike. With no physical access to the tomb and no corroborating evidence, many scholars considered Sima Qian's account to be more allegorical than factual. Early Western sinologists, encountering the text through translations in the 19th and early 20th centuries, often compared it to the pyramids of Egypt or the mausoleums of Persia, dismissing the more elaborate details as myth. Even within China, where Sima Qian's historical authority was revered, the Shiji's portrayal of rivers of mercury and armed traps was often interpreted as moral commentary rather than literal record, illustrating the dangers of despotic excess. The tide of opinion began to shift only in the latter half of the 20th century. When the terracotta army was discovered in 1974, the sheer scale and sophistication of the find transformed the understanding of Qin burial practices and lent new credibility to Sima Qian's descriptions. Archaeologists working in the Qin Shi Huang Mausoleum Site Museum, established officially in 1979, found evidence that seemed to confirm the historian's claims. Archaeological surveys using ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry have mapped large, complex structures beneath the mound, consistent with Sima Qian's references to palace halls and walled enclosures within the tomb. The discovery of thousands of real bronze crossbow components, many still functional after more than 2 millennia, lends plausibility to the idea that similar weapons could have been installed as defensive measures inside the sealed chamber. These artifacts reveal an advanced understanding of standardized mass production, with precision engineering that would not be seen again in some parts of the world until the modern era. Similarly, the elaborate cosmological symbolism described by Sima Qian, such as pearled ceilings representing the heavens and flowing mercury rivers symbolizing the earth, matches the broader Qin ideology of the emperor as the cosmic ruler, uniting heaven and earth in his person. However, no direct excavation of the central tomb has yet been undertaken. Chinese archaeologists, led by the Shaanxi Provincial Institute of Archaeology and supervised by the State Administration of Cultural Heritage, have repeatedly emphasized that current preservation technology is insufficient to protect the delicate contents from exposure. Sima Qian's account is thus both a historical record and a scientific guide. The long dismissal of Sima Qian's account as mere legend is a reminder of how fragile the line can be between myth and historical truth. For nearly 2 millennia, his vision of rivers of mercury, mechanical traps, and celestial ceilings seemed like imaginative storytelling. Yet modern science has revealed that much of it may rest on factual foundations. His Shiji was not intended as myth-making, but as an effort to record the totality of human experience, moral and material alike. As such, it has become one of the rare ancient sources to bridge the worlds of literature, history, and empirical evidence. Death and funeral rites of the emperor. Qin Shi Huang died in 210 BCE during an imperial tour of the eastern provinces of his vast empire. Historical records, particularly Sima Qian's records of the Grand Historian, provide the main surviving account of his death and the extraordinary events that followed. At the time, the emperor was traveling along the eastern seaboard, near Pingyuan County, in present-day Hebei Province, in search of an elixir of immortality. Obsessed with the idea of defeating death, Qin Shi Huang had dispatched expeditions led by court alchemists such as Xu Fu, who sailed into the eastern seas in search of the mythical Penglai Islands, where immortals were said to live. Ironically, the emperor's death came not from aging, but likely from mercury poisoning, the same substance he believed could grant eternal life. Many modern historians and toxicologists have concluded that the elixirs prepared by his alchemists contained mercury sulfide or cinnabar, a substance he consumed regularly. Over time, this would have caused tremors, paranoia, and organ failure, symptoms consistent with descriptions of his deteriorating health. When Qin Shi Huang suddenly died, he was only 49 years old. His court was thrown into chaos. The emperor's entourage included his chief eunuch, Zhao Gao, the prime minister Li Si, and his eldest son Fusu, who was stationed far away at the northern frontier. To prevent disorder or rebellion, Zhao Gao and Li Si decided to conceal the emperor's death until they could manipulate the succession. They transported his body in secret back toward the capital Xi'an, a journey of nearly 700 kilometers during the height of summer. According to Shiji, the smell of decay began to leak from the imperial carriage during the long trip, forcing attendants to disguise it by carrying cartloads of salted fish to mask the odor. Only upon their return to the capital did officials announce the emperor's death and proclaim his younger son, Hu Hai, as the second emperor, an act orchestrated by Zhao Gao to seize power. The funeral of Qin Shi Huang was unlike anything China had ever seen. Preparations for his burial had begun almost immediately after he ascended the throne of the Qin state at the age of 13 in 246 BCE, long before he became emperor of all China. Thousands of workers, some estimates suggest over 700,000 laborers, including prisoners, conscripts, and artisans, were mobilized to carve out the massive underground complex at the foot of Mount Li. The site was chosen for its geomantic significance, aligning with traditional beliefs about the energy or qi flowing through the landscape. Over the decades, the necropolis expanded into a vast subterranean city, containing palaces, towers, offices, storerooms, stables, and even replicas of rivers and seas made of flowing mercury. The construction continued throughout his reign and was not yet completed when he died. His sudden death accelerated its completion under the supervision of the court. When the body of Qin Shi Huang was finally laid to rest, the burial was carried out in absolute secrecy and haste. The emperor's remains were placed within a series of nested coffins and sarcophagi, surrounded by treasures, weapons, jade ornaments, and ritual objects symbolizing the cosmos he had unified. Sima Qian wrote that the tomb's inner chamber was decorated to represent the empire itself, the ceiling studded with pearls for stars, the floor inlaid with rivers of mercury that simulated the Yangtze and Yellow rivers, and the whole sealed with layers of bronze and stone to make it watertight. Craftsmen were instructed to rig mechanical crossbows that would fire at intruders once the tomb was sealed, ensuring the emperor's eternal protection. After the construction was finished and the emperor's body interred, the artisans and laborers who knew the layout of the tomb were said to have been entombed alive, either buried within the site or executed nearby, so that no one could reveal its secrets. This practice was not uncommon in early imperial burials designed to preserve the sanctity of the ruler's resting place. The exact logistics of the funeral procession remain uncertain, but it is clear that much of the burial complex, particularly the famous terracotta army, about 1.5 kilometers east of the central mound, was constructed during the emperor's lifetime, not after his death. Archaeological analysis of the pits, pottery inscriptions, and weapon production marks indicates coordinated workshops operating from roughly 246 to 208 BCE, suggesting that the soldiers and chariots were completed while the emperor still lived. They were positioned in their underground corridors and covered long before the final burial, forming the outer defenses of the necropolis. The central tomb, where the emperor's actual body lies, appears to have been sealed soon after his death, with workers layering earth over the mound until it blended into the surrounding hillside. Then there were the burial rites. The emperor, who had declared himself August Thearch, or Huangdi, saw his death as a continuation of divine rule. His tomb was not simply a resting place, but a palace of eternity, a continuation of his centralized authority in the afterlife. Ritual objects, bronze vessels, jade seals, and offerings were buried to maintain the bureaucratic order of his empire beyond death. Contemporary records describe the burning of incense and the offering of food, music, and sacrifices at the tomb site, overseen by officials appointed for that very purpose. While human sacrifice had declined by the late Warring States period, it is believed that concubines, servants, and guards may have been buried with him, following early imperial funerary customs. Archaeological evidence from nearby pits containing skeletons and burnt remains lends weight to this possibility. Despite the monumental scale of the mausoleum, it eventually disappeared from collective memory. The decline of the Qin dynasty was swift. Within just 4 years of Qin Shi Huang's death, the empire collapsed amid uprisings and civil war. Rebel forces led by Xiang Yu of Chu plundered and burned the imperial palaces at Xi'an in 206 BCE. According to Shiji, Xiang Yu also looted the tomb, though archaeologists have found little evidence of large-scale disturbance in the central mound, suggesting that any destruction may have been limited to the surface structures. Over time, centuries of erosion, flooding, and agricultural activity buried the site completely. By the Han Dynasty, which lasted from 206 BCE to 220 CE, its exact location had been forgotten. The Great Mound was known locally as Lishan Hill, but few realized it concealed the resting place of the first emperor. For more than 2 millennia, the tomb remained lost to history, its existence preserved only in ancient texts. It was rediscovered purely by accident in March 1974, but the Chinese refused to open the tomb. Let's see why that is the case. China was mocked for keeping the emperor's tomb sealed. In the years following the 1974 discovery of the terracotta army near Xi'an in China's Shaanxi province, scholarly attention began to move beyond the ranks of life-sized warriors toward the vast earthen mound that dominates the site, the unexcavated tomb of Qin Shi Huang. The mound rises roughly 50 meters above the plain and sprawls over an estimated 350,000 square meters at the foot of Mount Li. Although untouched by excavation, half a century of scientific investigation has brought the invisible interior of this burial complex into clearer focus. Through soil chemistry, remote sensing, and geophysical mapping, researchers have found mounting evidence that supports details first recorded more than 2 millennia ago by the historian Sima Qian in his Records of the Grand Historian. In the late 1970s and early 80s, researchers from the Chinese Academy of Sciences undertook systematic geochemical analyses around the Mount Li burial mound. Employing atomic absorption spectrometry, they collected and tested hundreds of soil samples from different depths and coordinates. Their results, published between 1980 and 1983, revealed mercury concentrations up to 10 to 100 times higher than natural background levels. Particularly on the southern and northeastern slopes, readings exceeded 1 part per million. This was a striking anomaly in loess soil. The pattern of distribution, appearing in localized linear bands rather than random scatter, suggested deliberate placement consistent with Sima Qian's claim that mercury was poured into channels to represent China's rivers and seas within the underground palace. Later tests in the 1990s and early 2000s, led by Northwest University in Xi'an and the Shaanxi Provincial Institute of Archaeology, confirmed the earlier results using advanced methods such as cold vapor atomic fluorescence spectrometry. These studies ruled out modern contamination and geological causes, showing that the mercury had ancient human origins. The findings implied staggering quantities of mercury must have been used, likely several tens of tons, corresponding to the rivers and seas described in early texts. Researchers linked these materials to cinnabar, or mercuric sulfide, deposits in present-day Guizhou and Hunan provinces, which were already known centers of mercury mining during the Warring States period. Such logistical scale demonstrates not only the immense wealth of the Qin Empire, but also its capacity for coordinated resource extraction and transportation over long distances. The mercury data thus serve as both chemical and historical testimony to the unprecedented industrial organization that supported Qin Shi Huang's reign. Parallel to geochemical research, geophysical surveys since the early 2000s have mapped the unseen architecture beneath the mound. Teams from the Chinese Academy of Cultural Heritage and the Shaanxi Provincial Institute of Archaeology used ground-penetrating radar, electrical resistivity tomography, and magnetometry to identify subsurface structures without excavation. These technologies, which detect contrasts in density, conductivity, and magnetism, revealed a vast system of chambers and walls extending roughly 30 meters below ground. The data delineate a central rectangular complex encircled by multiple perimeter walls up to 20 meters thick, consistent with textual descriptions of a heavily fortified burial palace. Magnetometric anomalies detected in 2011 by a Beijing University of Technology research team indicated large quantities of metal, possibly bronze, iron, and gold, distributed in patterns that suggest ceremonial or mechanical placement. These signals echo the historical accounts of bronze weapons, metallic coffins, and automated crossbows said to guard the tomb. While the evidence remains indirect, the cumulative picture aligns remarkably well with Sima Qian's depiction of a subterranean world mirroring the emperor's court. What modern science has revealed most convincingly, however, is that the tomb chamber appears structurally intact after more than 2,200 years. Radar imaging shows no sign of collapse or subsidence despite frequent seismic activity in the region. Yet this very stability is fragile. Modeling suggests that any breach could disrupt delicate temperature and humidity balances, endangering organic materials sealed within. Based on artifacts from nearby pits, archaeologists expect that the main chamber likely contains wood, lacquer, textiles, and possibly parchment or silk documents. These materials would degrade rapidly upon exposure to oxygen and microbes. When the Terracotta Army was unearthed in 1974 under the direction of archaeologist Zhao Kongmin, the warriors' painted surfaces were still vivid with red, blue, and purple pigments. Within minutes of contact with air, however, the lacquer beneath the paint curled, cracked, and disintegrated. Later analyses showed that the lacquer, composed primarily of urushiol from tree sap, had remained stable only in the tomb's oxygen-free humidity. Once unearthed, oxidation destroyed the colors almost instantly. Conservation efforts in the 1980s and 90s, including German-Chinese experiments with polyethylene glycol to stabilize the pigments of the terracotta warriors, revealed the severe fragility of ancient materials once exposed to air. This vulnerability is exponentially greater in the sealed tomb of Qin Shi Huang. Adding to the risks, soil and air analyses have detected mercury vapor concentrations around 0.3 micrograms per cubic meter, posing environmental and safety concerns. To manage these dangers, the State Administration of Cultural Heritage maintains constant monitoring of temperature, humidity, and soil gases to preserve the tomb's delicate balance. Remote sensing and LiDAR mapping by Tsinghua University and the Chinese Academy of Geological Sciences have revealed a 56-square-kilometer area necropolis that mirrors an underground imperial city. Computational models from Xi'an Jiao Tong University in 2019 confirmed that even a small breach would trigger destructive shifts in humidity and oxygen levels, rapidly degrading organic remains. For this reason, China's decision to keep the tomb sealed is guided by science, not secrecy. Recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site in 1987, The mausoleum is both a monument to ancient innovation and a modern model of archaeological restraint. China has decided to preserve what cannot yet be safely studied. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.